Okay, hello and welcome everyone to today's event on Dynamics AX Marking. I'm Jason Gumpert from msdynamicsworld.com, and I'm really happy to have a first-time presenter for us today, but someone who many of you probably know quite well. He's been writing extensively for us on different AX capabilities recently, and it's been a pleasure to work with him, and it's also a pleasure to have him here today. Everett Boss is a solution architect at Sickich. He's a real ERP veteran as well, having worked on various ERP systems for about 30 years now. And we're glad to have him here today. During today's event, you can use the Q&A that you should see to the right of the main presentation window to enter questions anytime. I know Everett will be making time for those. And without further delay, Everett, I would like to hand things off to you.
Thanks, Jason. I am honored to be here at Microsoft Dynamics World. It's a great platform for all kinds of information. I'm always amazed how you get the latest marketing news from Microsoft there, but also updates from the battle in the trenches. And that is more like what I will talk about today, what we have found out in the last decades, working with AX every day with customers in the United States and Canada and Mexico. And I will share my screen now. We will start with a PowerPoint that you already have seen the first page. Now we'll go to the second page. One moment. I will make sure I don't go too fast because the sharing has a delay. This is the only PowerPoint you will see today that has some content. I want to be in the AX system for the rest of the presentation. This is what I have experienced, and of course I'm not pretending I know everything about marketing. There's a lot to know, but I will just honestly tell you what I know and realize there is still more to find out. But I will focus on the most important use of marking, and that is kind of the brown section in the middle. That is the more interesting part where the user has influence. The marking I will start talking about and show you in the beginning, that is this list in blue where we have essential AX functionality that cannot live without marking. The user should stay away from those marking links, although you can look them up everywhere. And you could unmark, but a user with some experience, and I'm sure you are all veterans, you wouldn't be in a marking session if you would be an AX beginner. You agree with me easily. Those transactions mentioned here, or those business processes, as some people like to say, they have marking as an essential part of the logic. If you take it away, you disrupt the status tracking, and you disrupt the correct actual costing. In short, you will be in trouble. I will show you a few of those, not all of them. That will become boring because it's kind of quickly looking all the same to the user. And most of the time, as an AX user, super user, or functional user, you don't really have to worry about it. Marking is done behind the scenes. The system, you can trust the system, it will do it. But in certain cases, I'll be very honest, in certain cases when things are getting stuck, and I have a very good example on the second one, you would have to intervene and say, okay, somebody's got to do something. I have to cut them loose, break the marking link so I can solve the problem. That is possible. So that's why I want to start my webinar with that. So that's, you will see a few examples of the blue. Then we'll spend quite a bit more time about this whole package supply thing. This really is interesting, and many of my customers, and that is just the way it has been in my ERP history with AX in the United States, are made to order, configured to order, engineered to order, and they were all immediately interested in this package supply. Now, we will discuss this honestly. There's, of course, a lot of pros. There's also a con, an obvious con. But this is an important topic, and maybe if you would ask me privately, I would maybe admit that the reason I wrote those two blogs, because nothing I say here is completely new. It has been said before in the blog that is on the Microsoft World, into Dynamics World, in two deliveries, 1 and 2. But this is really the most interesting part for me, for marking, where I have seen a lot of benefits in real life with customers. And we'll also talk about maybe some potential issues you could have there. The last one is also a pretty important one, where I have some interesting stories. What can go wrong there? And also what can go right, the firming of planned orders where the user has complete choice. So why did I make 3 colors? Just to, I guess, make a point. The blue, stay away, the system is in control. Only in a crisis would you have to intervene. The brown, you have complete freedom to set up things the way you want, and you can also disrupt. No problem. That could be for functional reasons, very legitimate, that you have to cut loose the marking for one production order maybe. We'll talk about that. And the last one is truly a very big modeling discussion area where you have to be extremely careful what you're doing with that firming. Clearly for MTO, you want to firm with marking yes, one of those 2 marking parameters we have in master planning. That one will also be very important. Enough PowerPoint. Hit escape, go to AX. Okay, there we go. I'm already in the sales order. Let's see. I'll just make sure I'm not going too fast because say nothing for a few seconds to make sure the sharing is catching up, and you should see a sales order now with 1 line. Some type of electrical motor, and this part number, let's say we have decided this is a make to order or make to order scenario. I would do this, create a production order directly from the sales line. It's not that we have that done a lot. I only know 1 company that does that. But as you can see, this is a fantastic example of marking, and we can go right into the essential thing of marking. It fills in item references. And the item references, of course, are showing on both sides of the fence. We're going to use language that is very Apex, I hope, consistent. Tell me if I'm not consistent. I'm keeping an eye on the Q&A. This is the supply order, and it's serving the demand sales order line. This is the supply side that tells you, okay, I am existing here with my quantity of whatever my quantity is of 1 for this sales order number, reference number, and that lot number is in the background. Also, of course, very important for tracking. And at this moment, there's no summary reference for another production order. This is the order itself, and that's the situation. If I go to the sales line, let me close him, go to line details, product tab, then I should see that production reference, and this is the production order number. This is a sign that there is marking, because there is a reference between supply and demand. Kind of like sound like MRP. Now in my inventory marking, pull down, let me not go too quickly here. There you see the famous sign for marking, which is the green check sign. The system has done this. Nobody wasn't going here, and nobody really should go here. Only in a webinar like this are you going to a marking screen to see what the system does. But normally I have no business here. This will work without me looking at it. The lot ID is the same, of course, between the supply and the demand transaction, the quantity are. And the bottom part is a very interesting part. We'll get into that more. At this moment, you will see something that is very important for the financial people that we probably don't have a lot in this session because this is not about finance, but I have to mention it, of course. Marking has been designed originally, a long time ago, to make actual costing possible, because this, you will see, is the cost price. That will be the cost of goods sold for the sales order. Literally, I can see here what marking is doing. If I have a FIFO item, of course, that's kind of a or a weighted average, or a LIFO item, marking will ignore that and say, no, I know much better. I have a much better idea. I will tell you exactly which cost to take. When this thing is shipped and invoiced, your cost is coming from this specific order, and I don't even care looking at the item master, the cost history, nothing. This, I will take what you did for this order. If we have a lot of extra work, maybe we have messed up, we have a lot of extra labor on this production order, that will all hit the cost of goods sold of this sales order. That's what marking does. And that's why the marking screen needs to show a cost price. But for us today, the audience, which should be more logistically interested. Of course, the logistics determine the eventual costing, but it's just a side note. There's a cost price here. What I find important is to look at inventory dimensions. They are corresponding. I'm shipping from this warehouse, this site. The production order should end up in this warehouse inside. The common wisdom is that in marking, the dimensions have to correspond exactly. And I lived in that illusion for years, but I have to say that this doesn't seem to be true. If I have a different location on the sales order than the production order, that doesn't stop the marking at all. So I'm still investigating the final word on that. I just want to let you know that what many people say, also Microsoft, that marking can only work when all the dimensions have exactly the same value. I didn't find that to be true. What else is interesting for us here, our audience, that hopefully is more logistically oriented, because that's what this is about. Physical date, very nice, product receipt, packing slip, financial date, invoice. If this supplying order is a purchase order, you would see packing slip numbers and invoice numbers show up when they have been posted. And that is important because then you know, well, this 540, is that really going to be 540? Well, if it's a PO, I would probably, I don't know until I have the invoice. So this gives you an interesting status update on this supply transaction. So that's the view from the sales line. If I go to the production order again, then it's a little different. In the production order, to see the markings, I have a special menu choice in the action bar. That is kind of unique. Only production has that. Because, yeah, production order has no lines. You can imagine why it had to be that way. The supply order is in the top. Say, okay, why am I here? To supply this demand transaction is a sales order, and this means we have a checkbox. Now, this is the type of marking you would not want to disrupt, but you clearly saw that I could. Now, and I don't have no reason to want to disrupt any of this. Now let's go to a so-called subcontract PO. So this is one example, a pretty obvious example of a PO, of a production order linked to a sales order line. Let's go to production now, where we will spend much more time today. And let's create a new production order for that interesting item 401 that we just had in the sales order, 29381. I'll just do a manual insertion in the BOM of a so-called subcontract item. It's one of those subcontract part numbers that are service items. Let's take number 4, service item. And I'm assuming, being veterans, you are not surprised by any of this. I have to change the line type. I have to put in a vendor, and that's really all that matters. The whole routing connection is completely optional. Unless you insist on paperwork for the subcontracting, then you need to do this, because the paperwork requires a link with an operation. But without paperwork, and we just want to see a PO show up, that's enough. This icon shows it's a service item. I will estimate this production order, and then I should have my PO. It's a shame there's no little announcement like PO created, but I guess there's your PO. Now, the same story is true here. And now I'll have some, there's my subcontract PO. We are not surprised. Let me wait until the sharing is catching up, because I don't want you to be splitting your brain between the audio and the image. I hope that by now you will see a marking screen, and now it already looks more interesting. A marking screen where the PO is the supplying transaction in the top. It says, yes, why do I exist? Well, I carry a service item that carries a labor charge for subcontracting, maybe anodizing or heat treat, and I'm connected to a production order line, production BOM line, and we are together. We are marked to each other. Why? Well, for tracing. So you can see how am I doing from the production order. You can see my PO number. You can track me in the subcontracted screen, and when it's all coming to the finale, when I'm being received and then consumed, my cost that is on that PO will hit the production order thanks to the marking. Without marking, that wouldn't happen. It would be a general expense that is not hitting anything but an account. If I keep the marking, the expense of the subcontracting hits the production order. We all know that. There's no cost price because I haven't received anything. See, this PO clearly it's not been received, so I have no idea at this moment what the cost price is going to be. Interestingly enough, you see other candidates show up. That is typical with marking, that the system in the marking screen will show you all the potential markings that could have been made. Of course, this is completely system controlled, but you could change the marking manually. Now, with subcontracting, it's very interesting. What is the most common mistake that you can make with production order and subcontracting? That you don't have your production order in a started status when you are receiving your subcontracted PO. Now, with the proper procedure, that would never happen. But I've seen it happen. Very quick turnaround, the production order hasn't even started, and there's already the PO being received, and then you get an error that the system cannot update the production order because it's in started status. It's not in started status. That's one of those examples I alluded to in the beginning, that where you, to fix that, you would need to remove this mark and say, okay, get rid of this mark, that PO, I have to unreceive and re-receive. Well, then you have to do something like this. Cut it loose, and then you can mark it to the production order again later, and then you can proceed your scenario. So that's one of those cases where you are happy to know as a user how to unmark something, which we will do later. It's very easy, although not really intuitive. But interesting to see that there's a couple of other production orders. We always get the question in implementations, we have a lot of subcontracting, but we make sure we have a full container of products or a full pallet before we send anything to the subcontracting vendor. That means we really don't want a PO for each production order. Very typical issue. How do we do that? Well, we had to customize the system, let standard AX do his thing, and create all those separate POs and consolidate them. Or if you can organize your production order estimation step collectively, you have a couple of production orders together you want to estimate, and it's all the same vendor, then it would create a multi-line PO for that vendor subcontracting. So you have your one PO, and supposedly that's how you control your full container. But of course, you have to make sure that you know what you're doing. It is not a standard functionality. Although we do have the option nowadays since 2012 to have subcontract POs be generated within a contract, a purchase agreement. That at least is a big step forward. But I'm saying this because here you could potentially say, well, suppose I have a PO manually created. I could do it that way. I create a manual PO for that so-called full container quantity, and then I link that bigger quantity, let's say 20, and if I can find 20 production lines, I can link them together, many to one here, so that PO, when it comes back in, will be linked to a multiple production orders, which would never happen in the standard system. And that's just something, a potential thing you could use manual. It really sounds like too much work, so I be honest, most customers went with some form of customization. Let's cancel, and we are in the PO. Now let's go back to our production order, which should be sitting right here. What is the story here? Well, same thing. I'm on the production BOM. Let me make sure I'm not ahead of until the sharing is catching up. Here's your prod BOM. I guess all we're doing is subcontracting with this thing. That is fine. Inventory marking. Now we see it from the other side of the fence. My my production order, production line is the demand. I need something, and my supply is the PO. They are marked together. If I would have to decouple, I click Set Mark Now. You probably know that. That's the unintuitive part. We don't like that. I guess it's the same checkbox. It's Set Mark Now, and then Apply, and then the green box is gone. Oh, okay. That's easy enough. And if you want to remark, then you click Set Mark Now. The quantity is populated, which you can update, by the way. You can manipulate the quantities. You hit Apply, and bingo, you're marking as if nothing has ever happened. And of course, in this case, let's see here, okay, everything is still good. Let's close this. We have a couple of more examples, but now let's show you a kind of a funny one. That one is a little funny looking, and it's one of those where you really want to stay away from intervening in case you have experience with quarantine orders. And here's a quarantine order that I created, I think from a PO reference. And let me wait until everybody is at the quarantine order because you don't want to miss the funny picture you're about to see now. But it all works fine unless we start intervening. So I'm almost concluding my story about the hands-off part of marking. Don't touch it. The system seems to know what it's doing. Okay. Quarantine orders, we typically get 4 transactions. Because a quarantine order is nothing but a double transfer. It's a double transfer transaction. I move it into a quarantine warehouse and I move it back to the main warehouse. That's an in and an out. And there's 4 transactions involved because 2 transfers. And here, it's very interesting, but also a little scary. What is the marking showing here? Well, it shows you the same quarantine order 4 times. Yeah, I guess we have 4 transactions in the invent trends table, so I guess that is not too crazy. Funny that it doubles the quantity of the quarantine order here, 6868. I'll be very honest, that is a little strange to me, but everything seems to work as long as you don't touch it. And those are markings that are critical for the quarantine order process, as you probably understand. We don't want to get in the middle of this. But just want to let you know that this is maybe a very funny example that the quarantine order is marking itself to itself. Well, but that's kind of normal because the transfer is a supply and a demand at the same time because it's the double transfer. There's a supply transaction, there's a demand transaction all the time, both of them under the same number 12. So that's maybe enough to convince you that you'd better stay away from unmarking quarantine order because I can guarantee you the process will be disrupted professionally and you will not really like the result. Okay, we are taking a transition now. PowerPoint, I don't have to show you the PowerPoint, but we are now going to the brown section. That is where, and I'll make sure I don't go too quick, where we have this interesting packed supply option, which has been such an interesting adventure the last couple of years with our make-to-order customers. And I will show you a simple bill of material, not even close to realistic. Many of our customers have very, very deep bills of material. But let's say I just have a simple designer show for the designer. Okay. Let me check. This is the designer view of my simple 2-level bill of material. VA1, VA2, VA3, and the parts. Even the purchase part is packed supply. Some of you say, wait a second, they told me you couldn't do that. No, that's not true. Purchase parts in the BOM can be packed supply too. Why not? They will be just linked, marked to the parent, just like everything else. It's just you don't see them all in one big screen, of course, but they function as make-to-order purchase orders. I am buying to order, nothing wrong with that, and it all works fine. Let's close and take a look to see how, for example, one BOM would look like. And I am assuming this is not new for you at all. See, there's my purchase part, and I say packed supply. I'm only going to buy you when I really need you to build my finished products. And here's a funny detail, maybe not funny. It shows you how serious AX is about packed supply. Say, well, this part number is not that unique, VA04. I consume quite a bit of them. So what I do for MRP, I say, MRP, I can say I want to, the other one. I want to buy 20 at a time because that's how they come. So in my site specific, say, well, I never buy less than 20. Well, that may be nice for MRP. But if you do packed supply, AX will ignore your 20. Said, you told me I'm packed supply. I don't buy for stock. I buy for true orders only. You didn't sell 20. You sold 3. I'm going to buy 3. Important to keep that in mind if you go with packed supply. Of course, the same is true for production. Let's see. I'm closing a lot of screens. Now I'm going to my top level item. Let me just wait a minute. I know the sharing throughout the nation is not instantaneous. This is the bill of material of my finished product, packed supply. The same story is true here. If for some reason I put in a multiple order quantity or a minimum quantity, that will be blatantly ignored, and we shouldn't be surprised. That's kind of how we want it to be, right? That's what packed supply is. Let's see it in action. I'm leaving the released products. I hope you want to follow me to production control. I'm just going to do a manual production order. MRP has to wait. And this manual production order is for my top level item. And I almost am certain that many of you have seen this before, but I'm just hoping I will tell you a few things you may not know yet. Okay, this is my finished product, a production order for 3. That's all I'm doing. And why do I make 3? Well, let's say there's a sales order for 3. The story can start there. Okay, nothing happens. If I estimate, you know what's going to happen. The estimation will create lower level production orders. So I want to wait a minute. Of course, there's no messages for the estimation, although there can be an error message. Now maybe this is something you are not aware of, but if I'm on the top level production order of my family that Dutch created, the reference list is very convenient, although you may complain, where's the PO? Well, we are in production module. If you want to see the PO, you want to do multi-level tagging screen. Here we only see our production orders, part of the family. Very nice. You see the reference level. Nowhere else in AX do you have that. You see multiple production orders. And the level, the BOM level they belong to. My top level item is what I am selling. I have a sub-assembly and I have a sub-sub-assembly that has a purchase part that I do not see right now. So that's very nice. What you would wish, maybe a little more info like the item description, but that's an old thing. We always can complain about that. And the start and end date will be filled in later. Don't worry about that. And you can imagine maybe other info, but this is what the customer uses when you do MTO. And this could be a list of 20, 30, what am I saying, 50, maybe 100 orders. That is totally possible. And that really has the feeling of project manufacturing, or it's a job for a customer, and it's totally, I need 200 production orders for that whole thing. Not unusual at all. How do I see the other orders? Well, of course, they will create it later, so they have higher numbers. Here they are, and now the marking. The marking shouldn't be a surprise. If I look at the top level item, the marking should show in update markings, and it should show, oh wait, why does it, sorry, my mistake. You should show it in the BOM, of course. In the BOM, because I have no sales order. This sub-assembly, inventory marking, I need it. Here's the demand. I need 3 of that sub-assembly. Don't worry, there's a production order for the sub-assembly that gives you exactly those 3. Because this item has been produced many more times, there's already a cost price, but I have no idea if it's going to be realized because it's made to order. It could be a surprise. So that's how I see it from the parent side. If I go to my order here, then of course I can go to my markings. That yes, here I am. I'm the supply transaction, and I mark to the demand, which is my daddy order, my parent order above me. He needs 3. I'm giving him 3. And I admit immediately, why is it negative -3 here? Yeah, that's kind of, just don't take that any deep philosophical meaning of the negative or the positive. It's the quantity of supply. When you see production, you know, oh, production order gives me supply. And the production line is demand that needs it. And those two are connected together. Now this is a family of orders, and this is the lowest level. Let's look in the BOM of the lowest level. Now I'll have to wait again. I think I'm going too fast because the sharing is not catching up. Let me take one sip of my coffee to make sure the catching has a chance. You should see a PO number now. The PO number. And that PO, I'm kind of curious, although I cannot know the answer. That PO better have an item reference in the product just like subcontracting. Why we even show this? This is the same story. Production line. That means there's a BOM line of this production order that is referring to this PO line. And if I'm insisting on my marking screen, here's your marking screen again with the supply in the top, because that's where I am, and the demand in the middle, because, well, that's what my marking link is about. And this item has been used a lot, so the cost price has been established. Those are all, I should have said at FIFO items, but we'll get to that very soon. Okay, I'm closing everything. I'm going to wait until you come back with me to the production order grid. Let's wait a second. Then we're going to go to a few important things that you can do now. Pay attention to the reference type. It's instantly visible in the grid that a production order is not standalone. If there's a reference type, it can be only two. Oh no, it can be a couple of things, but the most common one is it's a sales order when this thing is sold. It's a production line when it's what we have now, a parent-child order relationship, which is nothing else. If you talk to the MRP gurus in the world, said, oh, the MRP people, they know this is what tagging, this is like tagging, but then I'm not in planning anymore. I'm now in execution. Those are real orders that I'm going to work on very soon. Tagging, of course, tagging is an MRP thing that can change any day. But this is a permanent, semi-permanent, I have to say, link that ties orders to each other. Now, what's the dilemma? Customers look at this and they start playing with this, and then they realize, you know, the VAO2, I don't like it. I'm just making 3, and tomorrow I'm making another 3. I can do that much more efficient because this VAO2 is used in many end products, and it just doesn't make sense to me to have him packed supply. I want to make an exception for him. That's fine, and in the bill of material, you set him up as a normal one item and you keep another one as packed supply. Or, and this is the example I was alluding to, if that is just right now you feel this makes no sense, I'm going to intervene right now, that is totally legal, say, okay, I don't want this marking for him. I want him to be an anonymous order. I'm going to double the quantity or maybe triple the quantity to 20, and I'll just put it on the shelf and everybody who needs it can use it. Yeah, it's one of those moments where you can say, okay, as you can see, the reference immediately blanks out. So this order is now on his own. That's totally fine. There's no problem with that. Can you put it back? Oh, now we get into an interesting question. That depends. And now let us address. Now we have a tragic situation. And this is all described in detail in the blog, and that was for me a learning experience 3 years ago when I was not quite ready for that, because I thought it had changed between 2009 and 2012. This item is a standard cost item, okay? So why doesn't it show up? Well, now the truth comes out. I guess the marking has no effect for the costing of standard parts. How could it? I can point to any supply order with specific cost for a standard item, cost item, but it will be ignored. The item has a standard cost. It will not listen. Said, what do you care about marking? I know my standard cost. Unless somebody changes it, that's it. That principle of what marking really, the design behind marking as a feature, now is biting us painfully because once I do something like this, I can never put it back. Now in this case, that's fine. I was not intending to, but suppose I would like to manually mark it again. I'm out of luck because this part number is standard cost. Let's make sure I show you the evidence. STD, standard cost item, does not allow manual remarking. How extremely painful. We had a customer that I will visit soon again, a customer that does a lot of interesting MTO processes. They were determined to get over this hurdle, and we found that it's just one line of code, the famous one line of code to make sure that the system does allow you to remark standard cost item transactions. Nothing goes wrong. Costing-wise, we know nothing is happening, but we want it for logistic tracking. We want a supply chain information using marking, and that should be legal. But I have to warn you, standard cost items, it won't let you remark. Of course, the system is marking everything, like for every other item, but it's just the user cannot intervene as easily. Now let's go look through a few things. Estimation. all those transactions you see here, except the last one, including scheduling, have, and maybe some of you have seen this for years, but what does this reference box mean? By default, it's checked. Well, that means if you estimate me, you will estimate my references. Oh. Is that then, do I have to be on the top level? So I estimate daddy, and the children are also estimated automatically? Yes, for sure, but if you pick him in the middle of the family, then you estimate him, he will also estimate all gang, and even him. So they act as one. They are going to a status change as a family. How very cozy. And that is true for the release too. The references are always checked. The system assumes, the designers assume, that if you have a family of orders, why would you want to release them one at a time? I can follow that. So by default, it's checked. If the order is a standalone order, nothing goes wrong. If it is a family of orders, well, there we go. The whole family, hello, family. Family should release. No, I release the references. I thought I did it right. Funny enough. He doesn't. Oh, yeah, because I disconnected him. My own fault. I'm surprised it doesn't work because I disconnected him, so there's no hope to estimate them or release them as a family. That is okay. Now let's go to the next one. You can predict what I'm going to say now. This one is not checked by default. Is that not interesting? The designers really thought about it. If I orders for a customer job, kind of almost project manufacturing, do I always want to start them all at the same time? That is much less likely, I agree. Because you build a piece of equipment from the bottom up. And if you start them all, then you have a huge work in process. What is the good in that? We would start building fabrication, some sheet metal, cutting, CNC machine, then we have a sub-assembly, we have a bigger assembly, we have the final assembly, and we start them as their dates become due, so they don't check this, but you certainly could do a collective start of the whole gang. Nothing is against that. Let me find, I think I have another victim here that I could demonstrate. Yeah, here's a nice family. Let me redeem my mistake here. I will release the whole gang. Now the whole gang released. And now I'm going to start the whole gang just to provoke the system. I'm not recommending that you do this. Well, you never know. Certain cases could make sense. I start the whole gang. Whoop, everybody, they act as one. The whole family goes release start. What about report is finished? No, there's no option there. That would be creating a kind of a wild tornado activities that I don't think the system would ever be able to handle right. It would have to automatically report as finished, the bottom orders first, put them in inventory. Then, of course, we can go to the next level and consume that sub-assembly into the higher level and then complete him. That is a whole hierarchical completion cycle that, to be honest, we had to do that once for a customer. Very interesting. But never again, where our customer was really relying on contract manufacturing. And they had a structure like this, really, a two-level bomb, and the end product came in from their contract manufacturer, but they had all the materials. They owned all the materials, and they had to do an AX production order process for financial reasons. So they wanted a massive report as finished. If the top item came onto their dock with the truck, and they said, okay, AX, can you now make sure you complete all him and you complete him, etc., until I have inventory for my end product. And that was an interesting customization, I'll tell you that. It was a lot of testing, but it's eventually, of course, it worked. Pretty exciting to see so much happening automatically, but we all agree, I guess, that the report is finished out of the box, would not have a reference box. And for ending, no, we don't have a reference there either. Ending is done in batch typically anyhow, so there's no big advantage there. So that's the collective processing using the reference box is an important feature that I have seen used. The caveats we always get that sometimes, very often, customers realize that they have so many similar configurations or products going out the door that it's not efficient to do the package supply consistently for everything. But as we said before, you know, the package supply is a complete manual decision in the bill of material. Let me go back there one more time. And if you have a lot of sub-assemblies, you can say, okay, you are a package supply because truly in this product, that is something that I never have for any other product line or any other variation of you. Then you package supply, and for the next one, you're item. And you can do your efficiency with MRP as much as you want. Now, to be quite honest, there's another negative, and that's not in the blog, for package supply, that is the production orders for those lower levels do not exist. Well, they do exist in MRP as planned orders of the type dynamic. I'm sure you know about that. And now in 2012, they have this box called directly derived. In 2009, you just saw the word planned order dynamic, and you couldn't find that planned order anywhere. It was not in any screen, but in 2012, those planned orders truly are visible for the user with the checkbox directly derived. But you cannot firm them, of course. They are just placeholders for the explosion process, and they are going away as soon as the top level order is being firmed. But you have probably wondered sometimes, directly derived. I have quite a few here. Directly derived production, planned production orders, directly derived, or planned purchase orders. They cannot be firmed. If you try to firm them, you will get yelled at. As you probably have seen, one planned order was removed, kind of a little bit cryptical, but it clearly tells you that you are spinning your wheels here. There's nothing to firm. You can hit OK, and it will absolutely ignore you. That's what happens with those so-called package supply. But the problem is my capacity information that I would like to see for those lower level orders, well, it's coming in a little late because I have to estimate my finished order before I get those lower level orders popping up, as you saw, and then I can do a capacity planning. Although I'm not 100% sure, I have to try that again. I'll be honest with you. Maybe it is the directly derived planned orders could very well put a planned capacity reservation on their route, and then we don't have the problem. But I've had issues with that. Just being cautious. Using the package supply, do you have the capacity information you need for the medium term? Are you getting that? Because those orders truly do not exist until I estimate my top level. That's more about production. Now we have arrived in planning, which is good because we wanted to be there anyhow. Now let's take a little break, only symbolically. I want to make sure that the catching up of the sharing is kind of working. I'm now going to master planning parameters, and then I'll wait until you have arrived with me and see that interesting screen. Well, it's not that interesting. It's always surprising how few parameters there are in master planning. But okay, we got used to that. Let's see. What is our issue now? This is our discussion here. Oh, how interesting. Update marking. We had many discussions the last 10 years, and I'll tell you a few stories. First thing that people thought, and I would totally agree, I was thinking the same thing, that this is truly a parameter for the module master planning. If I say update marking when anybody firms in my company is extended, it will be extended. Well, that was an illusion because that parameter is really not controlling what is happening when a user ends up here. Let's say a planner is firming something. Then in this setup, what the system really shows, and you see it demonstrated, is what this user, in this case Everett, what he used the last time he was firming anything. He used standards, which is true. Yesterday I did a test and I did a standard firming, update marking standard. That's what really controls what is here. You already guessed what I'm going to say next. People were not really aware of that. They never looked at this, and they just firmed cheerfully. While somebody went on vacation, they had a replacement planner firming. That was a different user, of course. He had a different default here for his user, and suddenly there was no marking. And that created big trouble. Or the opposite. Big anonymous purchase orders that you really don't want to be marked to anything were suddenly tied to a production order. So upon receiving that PO, the quantity of that PO, or maybe everything, was immediately physically reserved, because ordered reserved, that's what marking does, became physically reserved, and you couldn't move it. The PO received was stuck on the in-dock. We have seen that problem many times. The only thing that helps is either a customization or education that this value is user-specific. It's one of those user defaults that are stored in the usage data in tools options. I'm not going to go there, but you know what I'm talking about. You're all veterans. Tools options usage data, that's where this is stored. And that will be what the system was doing in the firming. Very important to know. That's the first thing. Then the second thing, what is so interesting about the difference between standard and extended? I had been in the dark about that so many years. I said, well, extended, that's the many-to-one. First of all, if you have a situation, and that's pretty easy to have in MRP, where the supply quantity, the order, is bigger or is so big that it serves multiple demands, so I buy something in bulk, and I have many sales orders for smaller quantities, then MRP will create a big PO, or using the periodic coverage, or just manually group them all into a big PO. Only then, when the supply exceeds one specific demand, then this marking difference between standard and extended has any meaning. If you don't have that, in make to order, it's always extended. And what we saw so far in the early phase of our webinar, all those markings that are kind of native to the system, they're all extended, you could say. They have no choice because there is no oversupply. As you remember, if I have those standard transactions, the quantity matches exactly. So there is no situation that you could possibly think, oh, standard or extended. There is no extension possible. But in MRP, you could have a very big PO because you buy them in bulk, always 200 in a box, no less. Wait, you cannot even get them less. Then there's a difference. What's the difference then? The difference is not that the marking doesn't occur. The difference is the visibility. If I do standard marking for that big PO and I have a small demand, like a sales order needs 10 and I'm buying 1,000, then the sales order gets the marking all right. The sales order I can see, okay, I have a PO coming. Perfect. Beautiful, because you get automatic physical reservation when the PO comes in. But the PO doesn't say anything. The PO said, well, standard marking, I'm a big PO, I'm coming in, I don't care. I have no marking. With extended, he would show, so the supplying transaction, and my blog doesn't say that precisely enough, so I will improve that, I will fix it. But the extended supplying transaction will also show which demand it's serving, until there's many sales orders for small quantities, and that same big PO is serving all of them, and you say marking, well, then the PO cannot possibly contain a reference. So the marking is fine. You can see all those POs marked against that one big, all those sales orders marked against the big PO, no problem. But the item reference, and that's what is controlled, item reference is blank. Let's take a look at an example where we have a truckload of markings. Then you can kind of imagine how that would work. Now, the screens are flashing. I hope you're not getting dizzy. I'm going to one of my favorite items and look at his transactions. A lot is going on here. And so, yeah, you can imagine here, let's see. I want to take the other one, BA03. There you go. So never worry that this extended or standard marking somehow would not do the marking. The marking is always happening. You could have a perfect example that many sales orders marked to one production order, no problem at all. The only difference is the item reference. So what would that be? Let's go to a PO. Yes, I have one here, open PO lines. Now the screens are flashing, and I'm going to take a break, so make sure you can catch up. This is a PO that we have looked at before. I'll stop until you see a PO. Then I'll go to the marking screen. See, there's no problem at all This will always be established with extended or with standard. And I'm running out of time to show you in a scenario for that because I have another important topic I want to conclude with. But that is, you can read it in my blog. Please remember that because there's so much confusion in the AX world about those two types of marking. What I say to customers, and now I finally know why I say it, because I said, let's take extended, never really knowing for sure why that was better. But, you know, you always think, well, if I do extended, I won't miss anything. If I do standard, I may miss something, which is literally true. You're missing an item reference, which you do standard sometimes. With extended, you don't. But it's a small difference. What you miss is the information in this little, this will be empty. If this is a big PO serving a tiny sales order, this would be empty unless you have extended. But then if that big PO is going to serve multiple sales lines, quantities, this will have to be blank anyhow because there's only a room for one demand here. And then everything is looking fine in the marking screen where you see a whole list of sales orders all feeding on that one PO. Now I have to show you something that is a little different compared to 2009. In 2012, which is the intercompany. I'm just going to take a few seconds to show you how intercompany is not using marking anymore, which is a disappointment for some of us. Because as you know, intercompany can get quite complicated. And then you have sometimes an issue, especially when you're still testing. And then you want to disentangle the whole thing. But that is no longer possible because they added a new table that contains intercompany order relationships. Now here's my intercompany order. How do I know? Well, there's a sales order that I just created, intercompany. Here's my intercompany PO. I said, oh yeah, there should be marking. I mean, boy, if there's anywhere the marking is used, it will be intercompany. Oh boy, it's empty. So the relationships between intercompany PO sales are maintained a different way. That means I can no longer intervene. If I have a problem with an intercompany transaction that gets stuck, it is becoming, and I'll be very honest, a little harder to disentangle. Of course, it's still possible, but not by a regular user like me who is not a programmer. I cannot cut them loose and somehow get them deleted because there is no marking used. And that's, I just mentioned that in the blog, but it's important to realize that because those of you that are true veterans since 10 years, maybe AX 4.0 or even further back, you know that that was possible in the past. For the last 10 minutes, I'm going to do a little bit of, not a little bit, a small dose of costing. I'll go to, and I'll just reveal to you something. It's all in the blog. It's just something that I guess sometimes people expect too much from the system. Well, that happens quite a bit. And then you are disappointed, and I'll just show you to not be disappointed because it kind of makes sense that this cannot be possible. Let's talk about a family of orders. We are back in production control. I have my nice little family of 01, 02, and 03. As you can see, they're all referencing each other. And if I would look, and if I think about this naively, maybe not naively, I can just think about it intelligently, said, well, I would assume I can do all those transactions for the family, except the last two, fine. What about cost? Suppose I have a lot of extra labor on this lower level assembly here. Wouldn't it be possible to see, and that would be fantastic for customer jobs, that I could get an early warning by just sitting on my top level item, going to, and now it gets very interesting, going to price calculation, the costing sheet, because oh boy, this is so interesting. That costing sheet has two modes, estimation, costing. Well, this is estimation, this is actual. I wish I had used the word actual, but I guess it has to be because it's not the estimation, it's reality. They work single level. They work single level. But guess what? I can say multi-level. Now what's the numbers? Exchange. Oh, multi-level. I suddenly realized that all that material is not really material. That's labor on lower levels. And if I would have different cost groups, I could see, but it's all assembly, so it all lumps together in the assembly charge back to single. So this estimation, I love this. As a project manager for a big customer job, I have 200 orders. I go to the top level order for finished products, and I could see how my labor is doing for the whole thing. Well, you would say so because this works so nicely. Would it not work for actual? Well, there's no actual here. Let me go to another one where I have actually some actual dollars. Hello, is it maybe this guy? Costing sheet. Yes. Okay. What's the numbers, people? What's the numbers? A lot of material. Yeah, right. That's not really material. We all know that. Because, watch this. Oh, yeah, a similar effect. I have a big bump in my labor, but I have reduced material. That seems to be working. But if you really do the math, and of course I did the math multiple times before I wrote the blog, you realize that no, that's an illusion. The system is not able, by design, but it's kind of deceiving. You would get excited here. Said, oh, I can see my actual labor through the whole family of orders. That is project manufacturing in the APEX definition. That would be too good to be true. And guess what? It is too good to be true. The numbers you see here are estimated dollars. And why is that? Well, these part numbers, as you may remember, are all standard cost part numbers. And this nice feature of the costing sheet showing single multi-level estimation is only working for standard cost. Now, you know that standard cost and marking kind of have a little bit of a difficult relationship, and you can now see that marking does do nothing for actual cost. Although those orders are all linked together beautifully, but the system says, well, marking is not supposed to do anything for standard cost, so I'm just going to ignore. The system is just using the bill of material to bring up the estimated labor of lower levels to the top level, and it does that also in costing. Now, I really feel I should program a little warning sign here. People, the labor dollars you see here are not the actual dollars. Well, actually, it's the mix. Part of this is actual, but only on the level where I am, which is the top level. The remaining labor dollars that were just coming from the material in the top down, those are estimate. And I tested this many times, and really that is how it is. So you do not have that functionality. We have customers, quite a few, that need that functionality. They insist. Well, if they really insist, then Sickage, and here's my only commercial thing, we created a customization called Cost Connect where you actually get the lower level labor visible on the top level. But that is a lot of programming. You have to go to all those posted journals and tear them apart. If it says material, say, no, you're not material. There's really labor and overhead for you. So that's something that standard AX cannot really do, and it's a lot of work to make it happen, as we can tell you by own experience. But I just want to warn you that this combination looks so enticing. If it would be a Monday morning, you would almost believe, when you're a little sleepy, you would almost believe it works until you get your HP calculator and you're checking and say, no, sorry. So yeah, sorry to end on a note that things that don't work, but let's go back to things that do work. The marking, in conclusion, is a very important feature for make-to-order business scenarios, which is what my focus was for today's webinar. We take for granted that marking is critical in all those standard business procedures we have in the standard system. That is fine. We have learned our lesson there. In case we didn't know, we know it's there in the background. Don't worry, it will work. Our most interesting application is in production, where we can use a reference list, which is really, I think, a winner. If you add some more fields, it will be actually usable. See now the start dates are coming in. Ooh, and I forgot to show you the most interesting one of the collective processing, which is the scheduling, where you have two boxes. You schedule the whole family and make sure that dates align. How very nice. So the family of orders will truly schedule as a project. Kind of amazing, without using a project module. The orders are all coming together. If I just click this, and of course I always click this, schedule reference, doesn't matter. Operations or job scheduling both have that. That is, so my conclusion is, if you have not explored marking for make to order in production, I would try that and see how useful it can be for you. And now it's time. Oh boy, it's already time, but I'm finished. Jason will coordinate questions, and thank you for your attention.
All right, thank you, Everett. Yeah, time flies in a session like this, but if you can stay on and take a few questions, we have a few already queued up here. So yeah, let's start with the first few here. So one person asks for the reference list that you get to from production orders, then view, then reference list. They say the reference list does not display production orders linked to a parent production order via manual marking is expected behavior.
That is not right. What's the Dynamics version of that person? I will have to test that immediately.
Okay. Yeah. So if for Devin who asked that question, if you're still on the line and can tell any more information on your version, please submit this.
Devin. Oh, I know Devin.
We can move on.
I will come back to Devin.
To another question here.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you normally see the PO created from the production order communicated to procurement teams to confirm with the vendor?
Yeah, that is an issue because there's not a good signaling going on. We have always tried to do something with an intelligent alert, but the alerts are always coming a little late. What the few customers I know, they make sure that those subcontracted POs get their own pool, a special pool called SUB, so they can stand out. Because a buyer is used to creating his POs by firming planned ones from MRP, and suddenly those subcontract ones just pop up. And then nobody will tell you that you should send them to the vendor unless you have a procedure. Said, oh, make sure you look at the pool code SUB, and they have the status not sent to vendor. You have to send it to the vendor. It is a weak point in the system. We have not found a perfect solution. And it's a very good question and very practical. Let me see. And that's about all I have to say about that. In pre-sales, you say, in pre-sales, people say, just do an alert. But, in real life, the alerts take a few minutes, and then it's not practical. You need something more solid. I wish we had a special screen, and that's what I would suggest for a design change, or if you have a customization. Make sure those subcontract POs have a special place to go. And then the buyer can just make that part of his routine or put it on the home page that, suddenly there's a few new of those. Make sure I mail them to the vendor also. Next one.
Okay, great. I want to, Everett, why don't you put up your contact information, because I know people are going to start departing here. I also want to remind folks we do have a survey that will pop up at the end of the session. If you wouldn't mind giving us some feedback, we'd really appreciate that. So just to get back to the previous question on the reference list display, that was for AX 2012 R3.
Okay, I'm writing it down. Oh yeah, I know. It is key technology, I guess. Yeah. Okay, I'll take a look at that because that would be a shock to me. That wouldn't work. Okay, what else?
Okay. Is there a query that will display both the production orders and purchase orders that are linked via manual marking to a parent production order?
No. That would have to be created. Yeah, the point is there is no screen that combines both of those markings. You can see the production orders together. You can see one production order with a PO, but you cannot see both. There is a missing display. We would need to create a new display for that, which I would love to have that too, indeed. I will ask our developer if he has an idea for this, but there's nothing in the standard system.
Next question. What harm is keeping update marking set to extended every time we firm?
Well, there can be a lot of harm because if you do that, then and you have part numbers you buy in bulk, purchase orders that I mentioned before, they will come in, and after receiving, you have physical reservations immediately. And as you know, reserved quantities cannot be moved. So in make to order, maybe that is perfect. You say, okay, I have it coming in. It can only go to one production order that is waiting for it. Automatic reservation. it's perfect. But if that's not the case and you want something to go on the shelf in the stockroom, and then whoever needs it pulls it from the stockroom, the usual decoupling, then the extended and even the standards marking will make that impossible. You have to manually unmark, and I know customers that had to do that, to make the inventory available for the general public, because it is reserved physically to specific transactions right after receipt. You cannot intervene, and you cannot transfer it anymore. So yeah, that's the only harm. What is the remedy? Yeah, to manually unmark. The problem is, the bigger answer is this. What we really need is marking parameter by coverage group. And I have a suggestion for that to Microsoft in the Connect database, because then certain items are always bought in bulk. We know who those items are. Other items we buy to order. Then you can have the marking adjust to the situation. Right now, the marking is a property of a person. That doesn't make much business sense. If Everett is firming, then he will say marking extended. And if Joe is firming, he will say marking is none. I mean, that in the business, it's not how it works. So we have a design change proposal for this one. And until that happens, we have to kind of creatively navigate. BOM designer. I love that question. Is this the name in 2012 and the name it was production line type? No, it was always, the good Steve Miller. Let me think. Let me think. No, the line type has always been called line type. Sorry. The word spec supply used to be called production. Yes. That is a new deal for 2012. Spec supply. I forgot to say that, people. Sorry. They changed the name. Functionality, 100% the same. The cosmetic name change in 2012. Yeah, you're right. Steve is right. Okay, we got Keith. Marking for stock, no orders. Leaving the updates to standard is the best, but if you're affirming for multiple sales orders extended, yes, multiple sales orders extended is the best. Yeah, I guess you could say that, although I don't know enough about your business. But I would say no. Sorry, Keith, I have to correct you. If you buy to stock, you don't want any marking. Marking is not going to do anything good for you. You have a big PO for an item you buy in bulk. You want to replenish your stock. If you have any marking, part of that quantity will immediately be reserved to whoever needs it. Well, maybe in some cases that is good. But it's the decision to me is marking no or marking yes. Extended standard is such a subtle difference because they both do complete marking. The only difference is a visibility thing in the product tab of the item line, the line item. That's the only difference. So the marking as a functionality that makes automatic physical reservations upon receiving, that's the big decision. So you have to decide no marking or yes marking. And then extended or standard is just a subtle thing that doesn't really make much difference. So I always say use extended, and you have the most information on both sides of the fence. But the green checkboxes are exactly the same. And I didn't know that a few years ago. So yeah, that was I was particularly stressed to tell you about that. Keith, let me see. Yeah, I think I know Keith. Well, Keith will email me. We can talk about this more because this is quite an interesting discussion. All right, what else?
That appears to be the end of our Q&A queue here. So thanks to everyone for those questions. Everett, I think we're about ready to start wrapping up. And yeah, let me just say thanks for taking the time to explore this topic with us and with our readers, our members today.
Was the lagging of the sharing not too bad?
Yeah, no, I think it looked pretty good from where I was, and no one else noted any issues. We did record today's event, so if anyone wants to explore it later, we will be sending out a link to that when it's available. And please do look for that survey. With that, Everett, I think we're ready to wrap things up. So thanks, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.